guys, and welcome to the Moms and Mysteries podcast, a true crime podcast featuring myself, Mandy, and my dear friend, Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Mandy. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful.
Are you?
I think so.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, good. I'm glad to hear it. Real thrilled.
Know. Sometimes when we start recording, even though I know we're about to start recording, it still almost feels like it catches me off guard. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's what we're doing here.
Oh, yeah. How am I doing? It's very introspective.
Right.
And sometimes I feel like I should be sitting on a couch and explaining to someone how I'm feeling. That's how I feel here. It's so warm again. We're back on the weather. We are back on our weather talk. It's so warm. Mosquitoes aplenty. I've done everything everyone has given me. I'm taking the vitamins. I have a spray. I have a balm, BALM. Yeah, BALM. I have like a mosquito thing you can like hook up that like sits by you and it's supposed to emit some kind of things where 30 mosquitoes today. I was painting something outside. 30 mosquito bites. Nothing. I'm just so
nothing
delicious.
Works. I know. Nothing works. I've heard of people doing like the simplest thing, like putting dryer sheets in their pockets. Have you ever tried that one?
I have. I haven't done it recently. The other one I saw on TikTok, of course, was Irish Spring soap. Like somebody put it on the outside of their house, but I don't have a problem with it in my house. It's the second I walk outside. So maybe I start taking Irish Spring baths. I don't know. I will do just about anything. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, this is why Mandy loves this time of the year, and I'm so happy for you.
I do.
But I'm ticked. I'm going to be mad until about January because all of my skin will be eaten by these stupid bloodsuckers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't really have anything to follow that up with.
So anyway, that's where we are. Happy March, almost April. Happy April, everyone, right?
Yeah. Yes. Almost April. Or I guess, is it April? I don't know.
It will be April, I think.
The other day, my youngest son, we were in the car on the way home from school, and he started asking me like when April 1st was. Specifically, he wanted to know what day it was going to be on and how many days away it was. And I was like, why do you want to know that? So no, I don't know. I feel like he might be planning some kind of a trick on me. He really wanted to know. He wanted to be sure. So I was like, I don't know if I should tell you.
Right? Well, my son has been talking about that and pranking my husband, but I'll be away for a volleyball thing with my daughter. So he's like, I want to plan where Dad thinks World War III is happening. Can you help me come up with something on the computer that will like flash? I was like, buddy, that's like a big plan and also terrifying. He's like, if you can help me make he's like, I can make an app. I'm like, all right, why don't we make him eat something weird? Why do we have to worry about World War III? So I hope you're safe. And I hope that World War III, if something comes up that says World War III on April 1st, it's probably my son.
Yeah, there you go.
Good luck to you.
That's so funny. And so cute. I love his...
Adorable. Not concerning at all. No, he's so much fun. But I was like, wow, we jumped all the way past, like water spraying at you to ending the world. Thanks,
It's
bud.
funny. I know I actually told my kids, please do not do any pranks on me that require me to eat something weird because I just don't want to eat anything weird.
Yeah. No, I get it. I like to have a heads up. I'll do whatever they have, but like I like to know ahead of time or get some kind of, I'll probably have to purchase whatever it is for them to do the prank on. Yeah. I'll be good.
Yeah. All right. So the story that we have this week is one that hits close to home for us, and that's because it happened right here in Central Florida. And it's a story that made national headlines in 2009. So having grown up in the Central Florida area and lived here really the majority of my life, there have unfortunately been several cases of missing women that have really stood out over those years. Jennifer Kesse's disappearance in 2006 was one of the first true crime stories I really started following as a young woman myself, and the reality of it happening in the same area that I actually lived in at that time was actually really terrifying for me. I had just kind of moved out of living at my parents' house and was living on my own for the first time when this happened. And so it was really scary for me. And if you have not heard the Jennifer Kesse story, there's a really great podcast that actually breaks that whole story down. It's called Unconcluded. So if you want to check that out, you can go check that one out. But today we're talking about another woman in Central Florida that went missing 3 years after Jennifer in a different part of the Orlando area. 27-year-old Tracy Ocasio went missing on May 26, 2009, and as we approach the 14-year anniversary of her disappearance, the case remains open and technically unsolved. Tracy has never been found, nor have her personal belongings, including her car keys, wallet, or cell phone. On the night of Tracy's disappearance, she had plans to meet some friends of hers at a local bar called the Florida Tap Room in the Metro West area of Orlando. Tracy left her parents' home in Ocoee and headed out to watch the Orlando Magic take on the Cleveland Cavaliers, but she told her mom that she planned on coming back that night after the game was over. At the tap room, Tracy and her friends cheered on our local team alongside fellow fans, and when the Orlando Magic won the game, everybody decided to stick around a little bit longer to celebrate. Tracy hung out with her friends until about 1 o'clock in the morning when she left to head home for the night. The next morning, Tracy's mom, Liz, woke up at around 6:30 and quietly made her way to Tracy's room to check on her and just make sure she made it home safely. Liz was surprised and a little concerned when she saw that Tracy was actually not in her bed and she couldn't find her in the house at all. She sent a text asking Tracy where she was, but she figured Tracy must have just been out late or maybe she drank a little bit too much to drive, so she may have stayed with a friend instead of coming home. Even though Liz wasn't expecting to get an immediate response so early in the morning, when 8 o'clock rolled around and Tracy still hadn't responded, Liz started to become really worried. So she called Tracy's phone at 8 o'clock and then again at 10 a.m., but she didn't get an answer either time. So Liz tried to call the one friend that she thought Tracy would have stayed with if she had stayed out for the whole night. And when that friend said they didn't know where she was either, then Liz started calling around to other friends. None of them had any idea where Tracy was. At this point, Liz was really getting worried, and she started to call around the local hospitals, the jail, and even the morgue looking for her daughter, but she didn't have any luck. Even though it was really not like Tracy to disappear without notice or to ignore calls and texts, her mom didn't really want to panic or sound the alarm too quickly. After all, Tracy is a 27-year-old woman, so she doesn't exactly have to check in with her parents, but Liz still thought, it was really strange, but she thought she would figure out where Tracy was on her own. Tracy's dad, Joe, was actually out of town on a business trip at this time, so Liz was really on her own trying to figure all of this out. As the hours went by, Liz only got more worried, but she kept hoping that Tracy had just gone to a friend's house and that she was going to come back anytime.
Tracy was born on August 10th, 1981. She was an only child to her parents, Liz and Joe, and she quickly became Daddy's little girl. From an early age, Tracy was really outgoing, and she was someone that could really make friends in any setting. Her parents also said that she was very open and trusting, and she tended to actually trust people very quickly. The Ocasio family lived in Virginia when Tracy was younger, but they would often visit Florida for beach vacations. So during the summer before Tracy's senior year, her dad actually was transferred to the Orlando area. So they all made the move to Central Florida, where they settled in Ocoee. The move was really hard for Tracy. I imagine leaving right before your senior year, that's going to be really tough. She's leaving her school, she's leaving her friends behind, and starting a new school, literally your last year of school. That's going to be rough. And to make things worse, the high school in Florida actually required more credits than the school that she had been to in Virginia. So she basically had to start going to school full-time instead of part-time like she had been doing previously. So she ended up deciding not to continue high school in Florida and opted out to get her GED instead. During this time, she's working in various restaurants and retail stores while she continues to live with her parents until she was able to get a place of her own. So at some point after moving to Florida, Tracy and her dad started attending Orlando Magic games together, and Tracy really loved this. She was a huge fan, and she was out there cheering as loudly as possible and just having a really good time at these games. But when Tracy wasn't able to attend the games in person, the next best thing was for her to watch the game at her favorite local hangout, the Florida Tap Room. Tracy was a regular there, and she was a known patron to the bar. It's the kind of place where the crowd is kind of always the same there. And so she knew basically everyone, and she would kind of float around from table to table, talking to everyone and really just enjoying the friendly atmosphere. When Tracy was in her mid-20s, she started thinking about her future, and she decided to start making some changes so that she'd be able to move out of her parents' house, maybe start a career and start a family. So she began taking classes at a local community college, and in the meantime, She actually turned one of her hobbies into a moneymaker, and that was that she began making jewelry and being able to sell it online. As an adult, Tracy was very close with her parents, particularly her mom, and they would speak often when Tracy wasn't at home. So when Tracy didn't come home after a typical night at the tap room, her mom had reason to be concerned.
So finally, after not hearing from Tracy all day that day, the phone rang at the Ocasio home at around 7 p.m. When Liz answered, it was a police officer and he was looking for Tracy. So Liz told the officer that she was actually Tracy's mom and asked why he was looking for her. She explained that she was actually also looking for Tracy and had been worried about her whereabouts all day long. The officer then told Liz that Tracy's yellow Chevy Cobalt had been found abandoned in the front yard of someone's property on Franklin Street in Ocoee. The car was unlocked, but the keys were not inside, and neither was Tracy's wallet or phone. The officer told Liz that he just needed someone to come move Tracy's car. And the property that it was found on was just a few miles from the Ocasio home, so Liz was able to head over there right away. At this point, she's extremely confused. She doesn't really know what's going on. All she knows is, I've been looking for my daughter all day. The police have found her car in some random person's front yard. What in the world is going on?
But it's got to be weird for her, like, to have told the officer, I've been trying to find my daughter as well. And he's just like, okay, I just need you to come get this. Like, he's not showing any real concern that
Right.
she's not at the
With her
house.
vehicle? Yeah.
So it makes sense that her mom would be like, okay, maybe like trying not to overthink it, trying not to worry too much, that she could kind of be like, well, if the officer's not,
Right.
freaking
I
out
do
that this is so
agree.
out of the ordinary, then I shouldn't be. That's how I kind of took this.
Yeah, I do kind of think that's a little surprising that the officer wasn't like, well, we might need to
Yeah,
like
these
call
two
some more,
things.
yeah, some more help and look into this a little further. So when Liz got to Tracy's car, she noticed right away that both of the front seats were pushed all the way forward, as if somebody had been in the back and had to be let out that way. Liz said, you of course can't drive with the seats pushed up as far as they were, so she found this to be really strange. After getting back home with the car, Liz called her husband Joe and told him about everything that had happened that day. And they agreed after talking that they should report Tracy missing. When Liz told the detectives about everything, they started searching for Tracy right away. Tracy's last known location was the Florida tap room, so the Orlando Police Department was placed in charge of this investigation. At the tap room, a bartender confirmed that Tracy had been there the night before, but they said that Tracy didn't seem to be acting out of the ordinary and there was really nothing strange about that night. The detectives obtained the surveillance video from the bar and they began watching the tapes, specifically focusing on the time after the basketball game ended and leading up to the point when Tracy left. At about 1:30 a.m., Tracy was seen on surveillance leaving the tap room with a man. This man was quickly able to be identified as James Virgil Hadaway. And this is a man that Tracy had met only about a week earlier at the same bar. So they were really just new acquaintances. They weren't exactly friends.
It was soon learned that James did have an extensive criminal history dating back to when he was still a minor. As a juvenile, he was convicted of kidnapping and bodily injury in Hillsborough County, and as an adult, he'd been convicted of DUI, reckless driving, drug possession, and more. At the time of Tracy's disappearance, James's most recent arrest was in April of 2009, which was about a month before, for criminal mischief. He was actually out on bail at the time he was seen leaving the bar with Tracy. And side note for this criminal mischief charge in this case was that James had allegedly punched the side of a van that wasn't his. And so he ended up actually going to trial for this charge, but he was later found not guilty. It was also learned that James had been interviewed by police before in connection with another missing person. So in February 2009, just a couple months before Tracy disappeared, a friend of James's named Chris George went missing. In Chris's case, on February 11th, he spent the day with two of his friends. One of the friends was James Hadaway, and the other guy was a friend named Tyler. So at about 6 p.m. that evening, Chris spoke on the phone to his girlfriend, but after that, no one knows exactly what happened to him. The next day, the officer saw James and Tyler leaving the woods near Lake Carter in Apopka. And so the officers see them, they stop them and ask what they're doing, and they tell the officer that they're looking for their friend Chris. They said that he had apparently run into the woods while he was on hallucinogens and said they hadn't been able to find him yet. Officers started a search of the area and found Chris's car abandoned off Ocoee-Apopka Road, which is right next to Lake Carter, and it looked like the car had been driven off the roadway. So when James and Tyler were asked to provide more information, they said that they had been driving around in Chris's car and they were all doing drugs. They then pulled over near the lake and Chris allegedly got out of the car, ran into the woods, and that's when James and Tyler lost him. They said that they tried to search for him, but they couldn't find him, so then they left. They were too afraid of getting caught with these drugs in the car, so they ended up taking the car, cleaning it out, and then returning it to the woods by the lake. So as they're leaving from the woods, from dropping this car back off, that's when police see them, which is kind of a wild story that your friend is gone. I get that they would be concerned about the drugs and stuff, but like to move the car's location,
Yeah,
to come back, to clean it out, like not just to remove it, but to,
right.
they
To
said
drive
clean
it
it
away
out.
and then take it back.
Yeah,
A whole
that's
car. Yeah, that's a
yeah, a whole car. Exactly. So James actually changed his story several times while speaking with the police, which made them really suspicious of their story. Eventually, though, both men refused to speak to them anymore. And so investigators ended up searching with a helicopter and four-wheelers in the area, but they were never able to find Chris. He was still missing at the time that Tracy disappeared. And we still have so much more to get into this story after a quick break to hear a word from this week's sponsors. And now back to the episode.
So before the break, we were talking about the story of a missing Orlando woman named Tracy Ocasio, who was last seen leaving a bar called the Florida Tap Room on May 26th, 2009. And she was last seen leaving with a man that they later identified as James Hadaway. So the police start looking into him and realizing that he does have a little bit of a criminal history. He is known to law enforcement. He's actually been involved with another person, one of his friends, who is a missing person at this time. And so they're thinking, we really need to keep our eyes on this guy. So the day after Tracy was last seen, detectives went to James's home in Ocoee to ask him some questions regarding Tracy. He told them that he had met her at the bar and that he asked her to give him a ride home, which she agreed to do. He said the plan was for them to go back to his house to smoke marijuana, but after he showed her the stuff he had, she didn't like it, so she left his house around 2 a.m., and he said that was the last time that he had seen or heard from her. James's story didn't exactly add up or match the evidence that the police had already collected, including that her car was found abandoned on Franklin Street, which happens to be the same road that the entrance to James's neighborhood is off of. So the entrance of the neighborhood was only about 150 yards from where Tracy's car was found.
At this point, the detectives working the case were very suspicious of James, but they didn't have enough to arrest him. So they kept investigating other possible leads. So while looking into Tracy's past, they learned that a few days after Tracy disappeared, a letter actually showed up at the Ocasio home from the state attorney's office. So this letter was actually informing Tracy that the office was filing misdemeanor battery charges against a man named Paul. And Liz says, she doesn't know anything about someone named Paul or who he was or even what the charges are about or what they have to do with Tracy, but she hands the letter over to the detectives. The investigators, though, immediately recognized Paul's name. He was actually no stranger to them. In fact, he'd actually had many run-ins with law enforcement. So detectives soon put all the pieces together, and according to Tracy's friends, prior to her disappearance, Tracy had this run-in with Paul's girlfriend at the Florida Tap Room. After this confrontation, Paul and Tracy have some sort of a confrontation outside the bar. So during this confrontation, Paul shoves Tracy to the ground. Tracy then calls the police and says, yes, she does want to press charges, which the state attorney's office ended up agreeing to do. And that's when they sent the letter informing Tracy of these charges. So this could be huge in this case, and they bring Paul in for questioning. And he's questioned on May 30th, but he denies any involvement in Tracy's disappearance, and he provided really an airtight alibi for where he was during the time that Tracy went missing. Investigators decided to check to see if there was any sort of connection between Paul and James Hadaway, and to their surprise, there was actually a little connection there. Paul's family owned a shoreline cleaning business, which James had previously been employed at. However, phone records showed no recent contact between the two men, and Paul was eventually ruled out as a person of interest, although he was not completely forgotten about.
Tracy and James's phone records were also compared, and they found that a call was made from Tracy's phone at about 4:30 a.m. on May 27th, and her phone actually pinged off of a tower near James's home when she made this call. Her phone pinged off a tower near his home again at around 8 a.m. when Liz called Tracy's phone to see where she was at that morning. So the timing of these pings are really important because James told authorities already that Tracy had left his house at 2 o'clock. So he would have some serious explaining to do when it came to why her phone was still in the same area many hours later. James did become an official person of interest, but he still wasn't labeled a suspect at this point. On June 1st, detectives carried out a search warrant on James's home. The hope was that they might find something that belonged to Tracy, such as maybe an article of clothing, her keys, her wallet, or even her cell phone. Unfortunately, they didn't find any of those things, but they did find a marijuana bong, so they arrested James on possession of drug paraphernalia. And they also were able to seize his computer and search the hard drive. The results of that search revealed that James had spent several hours between May the 30th and May the 31st. So this is a few days after Tracy has gone missing. He searched for several hours over those 2 days about the topic of how to commit suicide. Since there were no other suspects in Tracy's disappearance, James's arrest made the news. And within just 5 minutes of his photo being shown on television, the Ocoee police got a call from another woman who we'll refer to as Christy. Christy told them that less than a year earlier, on August 7th, 2008, she had a horrifying experience with James. He had actually brutally attacked her in Seminole County, which is just the next county over. Christy had gone to the police, and James was a suspect, but he was never arrested. Christy explained that she actually knew James prior to him attacking her. They were what she would consider friends. They had both gone to a party at another woman's home. They didn't go together to this party, they just both happened to be there. And at some point, the other people at the party started accusing James of going through women's purses, and also they were accusing him of trying to steal steak knives or silverware, which,
Huh?
yeah, I don't know.
That's very specific, though, where it makes me think, yeah, no, that
Yeah,
sounds
that's
like
probably happened. Yeah.
it probably did.
Yeah. So James was asked to leave this party, and one of the mutual friends that James and Christy knew asked if Christy could just give James a ride home. And so Christy says, yeah, sure. So according to what Christy told investigators, after they pulled into James's apartment complex, he was actually not living in Ocoee at this time. He was living in Seminole County. James invited her to come inside and smoke marijuana. Christy said, no thanks. She wanted to go ahead and get home, so she gave James a hug while they were sitting in the car before he got out, just a goodbye thing. But James didn't let go of her. He just started squeezing Christy tighter and tighter to the point that it started to really hurt. And so she started saying, stop, this hurts, but James still didn't let her go. And so she started struggling until she was finally able to break free. And then James lunged at her again and put her in a chokehold and continued to just squeeze her. So Christy managed to escape from the car, thankfully, and went running down the street screaming for help. While she was running away, Christy tripped and fell, and James was right behind her. He grabbed her by the hair and started slamming her head into the curb while saying things like, "Don't make me kill you." And he started trying to twist Christy's neck, which she later said felt like he was trying to break her neck.
Oh my gosh. Thankfully, though, neighbors heard Christy's screams for help and came outside. Christy was able to break free, and James ran off while Christy went to a neighbor's house to call 911. But of course, by the time the police arrived, James was long gone. Christy was left covered in bruises on her neck, scratches and scrapes on her face, back, hands, arms, and knees, and it was very obvious that she had been attacked. One neighbor, named Karen, told officers that she recognized Christy's attacker as being James Hadaway. So Karen and her boyfriend had both witnessed the attack, and while the boyfriend said he didn't recognize the perpetrator, he did say that he saw that the man, quote, had a woman suspended in the air with both hands around her neck, end quote. So Michael runs outside and helps Christy and then brings her inside to safety. Christy tells the man that her attacker was named Jimmy Hadaway. Over the next few days, police try to find James, but they could never locate him. Paperwork was filed with the state attorney regarding the attack, but James was never charged or arrested. The chief assistant state attorney later said they didn't file charges because Christy failed to respond when they reached out to her for help. After the officers investigating Tracy Ocasio's disappearance heard about this prior attack on Christy and the likelihood that James Hadaway was responsible, they thought they were for sure on the right track, thinking he had some involvement in Tracy's case too. One detective even said, quote, "The incidents were too similar. Both young girls, attractive girls, giving this guy a ride home, and one got away and one didn't," end quote. Tracy's dad, Joe, said that after he heard about what happened to Christy, he thought James had attacked Tracy in the same way, but she wasn't able to escape and he killed her.
So, in light of Tracy's disappearance and with Christy coming forward with her story, the Seminole County authorities reopened the case into her attack, and James was extradited to Seminole County, where he was formally charged with attempted murder, aggravated battery, robbery, and burglary with battery. He faced a life sentence if he were convicted of these crimes. Tracy's mom, Liz, attended every single hearing in this case, and her dad showed up when he could. By this time, the media had really picked up on the story of Tracy's disappearance and the link that she had to James. And before long, investigators were contacted by another woman, who we'll call Hannah, who also had a scary encounter with James in or around June of 2008. James had asked Hannah for a ride home, but once they were inside of her car, James pulled his pants down and tried to force Hannah to perform oral sex. So Hannah refused and just went back inside the bar that they were at, but she didn't call the police to report that incident. With the story picking up in the media, it also became public knowledge that James had this connection with the other missing person, Chris George. The officers did interview James again in regards to Chris's disappearance at some point after Tracy disappeared, but it's not really clear what exactly he said about it. And he was never charged in Chris's disappearance, but that's not the end of the story there. So we're going to actually get into a little bit more of that after a quick break to hear a word from this week's sponsors.
And now back to the episode. So before the break, we were talking about the attack on Christy. We're talking about the other girl, Hannah, that came forward to say that James had either attempted to or had attacked them, and kind of putting together that James really seemed to have a history of attacking women and how Tracy could be another victim of his. So on June 3rd, about a week after Tracy was last seen, a massive search was launched that included the use of canine units, horses, four-wheelers, dive teams, and more. But unfortunately, no sign of Tracy was uncovered during the searches that day. On June 10th, a team of searchers looking through the wooded area where James was known to dump his yard debris. It was this 200-acre property near Apopka, but they apparently searched there, but it doesn't seem like they found anything noteworthy there either. In late June, Tracy's parents told the Orlando Sentinel that they were feeling frustrated by the lack of answers. They were scared and said they had no clue what might happen next. Joe said, quote, "We hold hope for a miracle, but all the circumstances tell us that something's happened to her. I hope and pray to God that's not the case," end quote. A short time later, someone calls the police to report that they saw something suspicious while driving to work in the early morning hours of May 27th. The person said that they saw a bright yellow vehicle parked on the shoulder but facing the opposite direction of traffic. The car was off the side of the road with its headlights on in a rural area near Lake Apopka. Side note, all these lakes are really in the same area. There are tons of lakes in Florida. They're all named. Really, no matter how big or small. Yes.
It's true. There's a lake at the end of my street that this street is actually named after this lake, and it doesn't even exist. It's dried up. It's a dried up lake. So I'm like,
that's so funny. I never even put that together.
Yeah.
There's lakes everywhere here.
Yeah.
It's wild. Or non-lakes, apparently, in your case. So on August 5th, authorities conducted another ground search for Tracy, and this time it was focused on the wooded area near Lake Apopka. On that day, Tracy's mom told the Orlando Sentinel, quote, "Hopefully they will find her today. I'm so ready for that. You're never ready to find your daughter deceased, but I'm really ready for this chapter to be over," end quote. Tragically, though, they did not find Tracy that day. August 10th was Tracy's 28th birthday, and her parents announced that they were offering a $5,000 reward. And this was in addition to a $5,000 reward already being offered by Crime Line for a total of $10,000. A few days later, a local periodontist put up another $10,000 for a total of $20,000 in exchange for information leading to solving this case. The Ocasio family was so beyond thankful for this generous donation from this periodontist. On August 22nd, there was a potential break in the case when the sheriff's department found a woman's black boot near State Road 50 and Bluford Avenue while they were doing routine horseback training exercises. This area had already been searched because James Hadaway was known to frequent this area. But the boot did match Tracy's shoe size, so her family and friends were asked to look at it to see if whether or not they believed it was Tracy's. The boot was made out of a specific material, so it wasn't like a random generic black boot. And Tracy's father was really confident that this boot did belong to Tracy, and so was another one of her friends. The friend said the boots looked just like the ones Tracy kept in her vehicle. They were one of her favorite pairs. And this friend said, I'm 99% sure that these are Tracy's. So the boot is sent off for further testing, which we'll get back to later. A cadaver dog is brought into the search area where the boot was found, but unfortunately, the dogs did not alert to anything.
A specialized group was brought in to search multiple areas on August 29th and 30th, but these searches also turned up no new leads. By September 1st, the results of the testing from the boot were back in. And sadly, they weren't able to recover enough DNA off the boot to determine who it belonged to. By late September, the Ocasio family was trying their best to come to terms with the fact that Tracy might not ever come home. They began the process of trying to heal and just move forward. Liz gave Tracy's rings to her closest friends and cleaned out the bathroom shelves, but she couldn't bring herself to go through Tracy's room or her clothes. And she said that while she had accepted it with her head that she might not ever see Tracy again, she just couldn't accept it in her heart. Meanwhile, as Ocoee detectives were searching for Tracy, Seminole County detectives were putting together their case against James in the attempted murder of Christy. A former girlfriend of James was tracked down and interviewed, and she told them that James had actually called her on the night of Christy's attack, and he told her that he had gotten into a fight and needed a ride. So this woman picked James up about half a mile from where the attack on Christy happened. And remember, where the attack on Christy happened was actually right where James lived. So can't go back there. So he told this other woman he can't go home, and she ended up taking James back home with her right after he has attacked Christy so viciously in the street. So it was about a month later that James finally actually told the other woman what really happened that night, which I don't even know how you get into that conversation. Like, how did he break the ice with that? Like, oh, by the way, that night you picked me up for a ride, I just beat a completely innocent woman and left her in the street. Like, what?
Yeah.
How did you even get to that conversation? Is just wild to me.
Yeah.
So the investigators also learned that a very distinct ring that was made of steel and it had these markings with this unique pattern on it was found in Christy's car, and the ring was confirmed to have belonged to James. So all of these details helped solidify the case that they were building against him for attempted murder. In early May of 2010, as the anniversary of Tracy's disappearance was looming, a group searched for her again in areas that hadn't been really thoroughly searched before, but once again, they weren't able to find anything. At the end of May, near the 1-year mark, Liz and Joe told the Orlando Sentinel that the only thing they really had to cling to was the hope that Tracy would be found one day. Her dad, Joe, said, quote, "I dread that day. It's a double-edged sword, like someone slicing your heart." I feel like in these cases of missing persons, that is definitely the most gut-wrenching and heartbreaking part of it all, is that these families have no closure.
Answers.
They don't, and especially when you want to hold out hope that, that someone you love isn't gone forever. And so, but without that closure, like, it's just, I can't imagine just every single day living
Like
that
living in
and
limbo.
right, exactly. So on May 26th, Ocoee detectives announced that James Hadaway was the only suspect in the case. Further, Sergeant Mike Bryant said, quote, "We believe Hadaway did it. He is suspected of killing her." So not only are they finally saying that he's a suspect, but they're also officially saying that they no longer believe Tracy is alive.
Yeah.
Although James still didn't face any charges, it was now public knowledge that the investigators did believe he was guilty of murder. In June of 2010, more ground searches took place and a dive team searched for Tracy, but they found nothing, and these searches continued into August. In mid-September, James's defense attorney in the case of attempted murder of Christie asked the judge to order the prosecution to turn over all the evidence that was collected by the Ocoee police during their investigation into Tracy's disappearance. So it's kind of interesting because there's really no reason for that.
Right.
James isn't on trial for Tracy's disappearance. He's on trial for attacking Christie, which is a totally separate case. He wasn't even on trial for this in the same county that Tracy disappeared in. So what does he want
That's
those files?
wild.
Yeah, why do they need that information? So, of course, the judge denied the request and nothing was given to James or his attorney. Days later, the judge even went a step further and ruled that nobody was allowed to bring up Tracy or James's other missing friend, Chris George, or talk about their disappearances at all during the trial for Christie's attempted murder. So can't bring up these other cases that he is involved in, which the prosecutors weren't really even shocked or fazed by this. It's pretty much standard protocol and kind of they expected it anyway. So they didn't fight or argue with that.
But that makes it even weirder that they wanted the records to that because knowing that they're going to fight to not have that included in the trial, why on earth would you? That's such a, do that on your own time, I guess?
Yeah,
I don't know. That's
a
just
rabbit
really
hole you go down. Yeah, on your own.
That's a Reddit rabbit hole for another day. Yeah. So months passed by, and in February of 2011, the same time as the 2-year anniversary of Chris George's disappearance, James and his friend Tyler were publicly named as persons of interest in that case. By this time, Chris's mom and Tracy's mom had actually become friends, and they formed their own little support system. Also in February of 2011, investigators searched Lake Carter for human remains again. They were looking for any sign of Chris or Tracy, although they were pretty sure Tracy wasn't there since they had already searched it more than 10 times with nothing being found. Chris's mom and Liz were both at the lake while the search was being conducted that day, each of them hoping to finally get some answers. During this search, for the first time, several human bones were found. The lake was actually drained to allow the search teams easier access, and they found more bones and a human skull, which were all sent for testing. Sadly, the team also found Chris's wallet, cell phone, and jewelry, so it was assumed that the skeletal remains belonged to Chris. Later testing confirmed that this was true. Experts were unable to determine Chris's cause of death, but the medical examiner said that he, quote, surmised that Chris ran into the woods near the lake while being under the influence of drugs and drowned, end quote. The investigation into Chris's case stayed open, at least for the time being. More on that in just a bit. Finally, though, in March of 2011, jury selection began for James's trial in Christie's case. Although they wouldn't be presenting information related to Tracy or Chris's disappearances, Tracy's parents and Chris's mom still attended the trial. Prosecutors painted this picture of James as being a bad guy with a history of violently attacking women, and they asserted that James would have killed Christie that night if not for the neighbors who interrupted the attack. 100% true.
For sure, yeah.
One of James's former cellmates testified against him and said that James admitted to attacking Christie. James told the cellmate that he was choking Christie when someone else showed up, and that he was glad they showed up when they did because he would have killed her. This same cellmate said that James often talked about how much he enjoyed choking women and said that a broken neck was like, quote, a broken stick in a sock, end quote. The star witness in the trial was, of course, Christie herself. She recounted what happened to her on the stand, and she stated that she was scared for her life. She said James would not let her go, and she felt like he was trying to break her neck.
I cannot imagine Christy, just her experience with that. That's absolutely terrifying. That whole thing is so horrific.
And knowing all the other things going around with him, alleged things that went around with him, and just realizing, I mean, thank goodness those neighbors were home and they came out. It just could have been a totally different story for her.
Yeah. So for the defense, James's team admitted that he attacked Christy, but they alleged that he was drunk at the time and didn't have any intention of killing her. They did acknowledge that James should be punished for what he did. They were just arguing that the punishment should not be an attempted murder conviction. They wanted the jury to find him guilty of misdemeanor battery instead, which that's just so insulting to the victim. Like, I know that that's their job,
Absolutely.
but it's like, oh my gosh, that's just another added layer of going through something like this, is having,
Right.
their side try and minimize what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So James also took the stand in his defense and denied that he hurt Christy on purpose. He said, quote, "I cared about her. I was not trying to kill her," end quote. James said that he was so drunk he couldn't remember most of what even happened, but from what he could remember, he gave Christy a hug and then she started screaming, "Stop, you're hurting me," and got out of the car and ran down the road. He said he then followed after her and found her on the ground, and Christy started freaking out and screaming that someone was trying to kill her. So James told the jury, quote, "I wanted to let her know I was not trying to kill her. I wanted to let her know everything was okay." But then neighbors showed up and said they were calling the police, so he says he got scared and took off running. He testified, quote, "I was not trying to choke her and I never bashed her head in," end quote. On April 1st, the jury deliberated for a quick 2.5 hours before returning with their verdict. James was found guilty of first-degree attempted murder, burglary, robbery, and false imprisonment. Tracy's parents and Chris's mom were very happy with this verdict. Tracy's dad, Joe, said, quote, "If there's any comfort, it's that he's behind bars and he won't destroy another family like he destroyed our family." James was sentenced on May 9th, 2011. The prosecution asked for a life sentence, which was the max possible punishment for first-degree attempted murder, while the defense asked for 12 to 15 years in prison, followed by 5 to 10 years on probation. The defense said that the attack on Christy did not constitute a life sentence, and they alleged that the only reason the state wanted to put him away for life was because of Christy's attack and because he was suspected in Tracy's disappearance. At the end of the day, James was sentenced to life in prison, with the judge making it clear that the sentence was based solely on the evidence in the case of Christy's attempted murder. The judge said it had nothing to do with Tracy. Either way, though, the sentence was still a major win for Tracy and Chris's families. James would never be able to hurt anyone again. Liz said, quote, "It's not justice for Tracy, but he can't do it to anyone else." Chris's mom actually said that she is not completely convinced that James is responsible for her son's death, but she does think that he played some role.
After James was convicted, the investigation into what happened to Tracy continued, and physical searches also continued. The Ocasios kept talking to the media about Tracy's case to keep the story in the public eye, which they continue to do to this day. May of 2022 marked the 13th anniversary of Tracy's disappearance, and her parents made this statement, quote, "This week, 13 years ago, we lost our precious daughter. During that horrible time of our lives, one thing that stood out to us was the kindness and support of our community, the Ocoee Police Department, and many others from around the state. From volunteering to search, donating water and food for the searchers, offering comfort, and more. We will never forget, and it gives us hope," end quote. That gives me chills to read
Yeah.
and think about. In June of 2022, the Ocoee police chief said, quote, "It is our hope to one day bring closure to this case and her family by finding Tracy or learning what happened to her. By bringing continued attention to her case, someone might come forth with the critical piece of information to solve her disappearance. No matter how inconsequential a piece of information might seem, it could be the key." Detectives have said the department plans to resubmit evidence from Tracy's case to see if new technology can pick up on anything. That is one thing I love about living in the future, or, like the more technology advances, like how these old things are being resubmitted now and they're finding stuff they couldn't find before because the technology just wasn't there. So as of this recording, Tracy's case remains unsolved. Foul play is suspected, and James Hadaway remains the suspect in Tracy's disappearance. James has never been charged with anything in relation to Tracy's disappearance. Tracy's parents seem to believe James is for sure the person responsible for Tracy's disappearance. They are still desperate to find her and to bring her home. They and investigators believe someone out there knows where Tracy is. Authorities have said people don't need to be scared of James. He is behind bars now, and he will remain that way. Today, James is incarcerated in Tomoka Correctional Institution in Daytona Beach. And just to recap, Tracy was last seen on May 27th, 2009 in Ocoee, Florida. The last person to see her alive was James or Jimmy Hadaway. And at the time of her disappearance, Tracy was 27 years old. She stood at 5'5" and weighed 120 pounds. She has brown hair and brown eyes. Anyone with any information related to this case is asked to call 1-800-423-TIPS. So Haley researched this for us, and she did a great job as always. And she brought up the Jennifer Kesse case, and she said, "I wonder if they've looked into the connection because there's a few years, in between." And apparently they have looked for connection, and there wasn't one. But that's kind of what I thought, because people that do these sorts of things or allegedly
Right.
do these sorts of things tend to have a habit of doing the same thing over and
Right.
over again. And especially, I can't remember the statistic now that we learned about choking women, and how if you've choked someone, how much more likely you are to
Right.
use a gun or whatever. I mean,
Right.
just,
Or to kill
it's
them
wild.
later. I think that was the statistic.
That
If
was
you
it.
have
You're right.
choked someone, how much more likely that person
It's
is
like
to murder you
52
later.
more
Right.
times, or,
Yeah,
oh man, I
it
wish I
was
had the
crazy.
statistic. But yeah, just wild. So he is behind bars, and that's where he
The
belongs.
scariest thing for me, I feel like, about this story and about James and people that are like James is that from the stories that the other women were able to tell, nothing happened to trigger these attacks. Like, it was so random and just out of nowhere. And so, like, that's the scariest thing, is that you could be sitting next to someone in a car and having no idea that this person is about to attack you in just a few moments. And like,
Right.
that's absolutely horrifying to think that anybody can snap like that, or can turn on you like to that level. It's just like so scary.
Yeah. I found that statistic because it just still blows my mind. Research has shown that once a perpetrator tries to strangle someone, they are 750% more likely to kill them with a gun later. And I think that's probably more in domestic violence cases that
Right.
statistic was taken from. But the same idea, like that's just such a precursor to
Further, right.
killing
Further
someone,
violence,
not
right.
just choking them. Yeah.
Right.
Very sad case, but I absolutely feel like it's a solvable case. Like they have their main suspect as DNA, or as technology moves forward. We're seeing cases all the time be solved. So I really hope for her family that they're able to get some closure. That's their word, closure, looking for closure,
Yeah.
in her case, and find some peace.
Yeah. All right. So are we ready to turn the page and move on to our last thing before we go for this week, Melissa?
Mandy, I am. And let's explain last thing before we go. If we have any new listeners, last thing before we go is kind of just something, it's a one-off. It's very different from the rest of our show. So if you're not into the lighter side of things, this might not be for you. But if you are, sometimes it's just nice to do something a little silly at the end after having a heavier story. So Mandy, you know what time it is. It's time for Love is Blind. Season 4.
I'm so excited. I'm excited.
And it is good. So we'll
It's
talk about
good.
it a little here, but we're going to continue our conversation on Patreon, patreon.com/moms and mysteries podcast. If you want to join us there, we're doing a live recap on Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please join us there.
Yes.
And all that information's on Patreon. But Mandy, how much are you loving this season?
I'm loving
right off
it.
the bat.
I'm loving it so much because there's just a lot of like drama and mess already right out of the gate. I'm so excited. And like way over the top. Like there's stuff that's just like way over the top.
It is wild. I feel like the first season had messiness to it. We had the whole Jessica of it all. And the second and third seasons felt very mild by comparison.
They were safe, right?
Yeah, everyone wanted to find love. The girls all bonded together and stuff. But here's the thing. In my reality TV, sometimes I do want that. Sometimes I'm like looking for a happy little medium. But other times I want revenge. I want anger. I want
Just
people
nastiness.
just as nasty and as catty as you can get. Like I don't want one person to say I came here to make friends. You
Right.
came here
To make enemies.
make good TV. That's what I want. I'm here for TV. So Mandy, we'll quickly, if it works for you, let's go over the couples that we find out. And like we said,
Okay.
we will be doing more of this on Patreon, much more detailed. So do you want me to start with name a couple and you kind of give me your first?
Sure.
Okay. And we're going to keep track of this to see how our opinions change. I'm going to try and make a little thing to show like what our initial thoughts are of people and how our thoughts change. All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Fun.
Mandy, Jackie, and Marshall.
Wait, who are they? Hang on, I'm looking at
You might have
pictures
to
of all
Google
these
them.
people.
I
Oh wait, I
know.
got it. Okay. Okay. Love Marshall. I'm
Love
not
him.
not sold on Jackie yet. I don't know. I'm still feeling out Jackie. I feel like we're gonna get to see more. I don't know. We kind of got like a little snippet of Jackie where she like
Yeah.
kind of had like an emotional moment, but about going back home and stuff like that. But like I don't know what that was really all about, or if I couldn't tell if that
I
was
didn't.
like a she's not really into him moment and realizing like that
Yeah.
she kind of got in over her head, or maybe she doesn't like the situation she got herself into. Couldn't tell if that was really what it was, or if it was
Right.
just genuinely like kind of like an anxious moment she was having. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about them. The jury is still out. I love Marshall though,
I do too.
and I feel like he might be not quite what she is going, or I don't know if she is what he is looking for or needs. I think it remains to be
Both
seen with
ways.
them. I don't hate them or love them at this point.
I would agree with you. I wonder if we're getting a Raven edit because I did not like Raven last time.
Right.
And
And then
like
I
I felt
ended up
like
liking her. So
loving
yeah.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I felt like same way. Like it just I was like, I can't get a good read on you. And that's sort of how I felt about Raven last time. So I'm jury's still out on that one for me. If
Marshall
you
seems
had
really fun though. I loved how I just love his whole personality.
I would have a hard time believing he was a monster after what we've seen, but
For sure.
we've been proven wrong
It's true.
before. These
Yeah.
people can be monsters. Mandy, if you had to decide right now, thumbs up, thumbs down, are they staying together?
I'm going to say no.
No. I'm going to go with you on no. There's no way. No.
I'm going to say
They
no.
just, I don't think so. Okay, Mandy, I'm going to go to the next one. Let's go to, how about this one? Brett and Tiffany.
I love them.
I love them.
I had to
They're
go make sure I was thinking of the right couple. Yes, I love them. Honestly, I feel like they might be my favorite so far to start off the beginning.
totally.
I feel like I have the most hope for them. They seem like they're both genuinely looking for the same thing, and they seem to have really good connection with each other. So I'm excited for them and excited to watch what happens with them. And hopefully nothing dramatic because they both seem like really good people for each other.
We need happy people. We need like a happy couple.
You have
Like,
to
we
have
need somebody
one.
to cheer
Yes,
for.
you have to have somebody.
We need
Exactly.
somebody to cheer for.
So that's what I'm cheering for.
Yeah, and they're both in their mid 30s, so I feel like they've kind of gone through life a little bit and like know more what they want than maybe like some of the younger ones.
For
Sorry,
sure.
younger ones.
Right?
But
Yeah.
I did adore Tiffany falling asleep when he was like
Oh my gosh.
sharing his love with her.
Oh
I
my gosh.
loved it.
I felt like, oh my gosh, I was so glad that he like moved on from that because I was like,
Yeah.
oh no, like I felt so bad because he seemed so upset and like he had every right to be upset about it, but like stuff
Of
happens. I'm so
course.
glad
And
they
they're
moved past it.
drinking wine out of
I
those goblets all
know.
day long.
Exactly.
Like,
And I don't know. I heard like one of them at some point, not during this necessarily episode, but somebody had said that they were in the pods together for like 10 hours. And I'm like, that's such a long day. Like, can you imagine just sitting
no.
around for
And
10
talking
hours
about
drinking
your
wine?
feelings, I'd be running into a wall
I
very
know.
quickly on that one. I'd be begging to go to sleep.
Yes.
So, what do you think about them, Brett and Tiffany?
I
Stay
think
together?
yes. I think yes.
I'm a yes with them as well. Okay. So far, we're both voting the same. All right, Mandy, let's go to the next one. Who do you want to go with? Zach and Irina, Micah and Paul, or Chelsea and Kwame?
Chelsea and Kwame. What do you think
Okay.
about them?
So I really liked Kwame at the beginning. At the beginning, I wanted to like him. He seemed very personable, seemed very happy, easygoing. Chelsea, on the other hand, I did not. I would not want. Oh, how do you say this? How do you say something really mean about somebody you've never met? She's a lot for me. Like
She's
that
a lot for me,
personality and
too.
energy would just
She's
be
a lot for
like,
me too.
let's take it down 50 notches.
Okay, so my honest opinion is I think they're actually not terrible together because I feel like they're both kind of into like that. Like, I don't know exactly what the quote was, but I think she said something like she wanted to have a spiritual connection with her husband's body. And I was like, wow, okay.
I'm good, thanks.
I get it,
I'm
but
good.
like it just kind of reminded me, like her personality reminds me, this is so awful, of the Meet the Parents, the movie.
Oh, yeah,
It
yeah.
reminds me of
Mhm.
the parents, and they're like sex therapists and stuff like
Oh,
that, like the mom is or whatever, and they're just like very open as a family like
yeah.
that. Like
Yeah.
that's how I imagine like her being like
Yeah.
as like a mom and a wife and a grandmother. Like I feel like that's exactly what you'd be getting. So like once I thought of her in that way, like I can't like unthink that. So now like I
I
just
get
think
it.
of her like as this over the top like super new age like grandma figure, even though she's not even old. Like,
Well, also, who was she? She was asking somebody if they had slept together, and then when they said yeah, she was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," and then she's like, "Me too, me too." I'm like, "Okay, you did not care what her answer was. You were just going to say yours." She's very confident, which I think is a wonderful thing to be. I just don't have that much confidence, and I don't. And I definitely am not talking about my confidence.
right.
So it's like she's somebody who would use the phrase, "We're building an empire," like
Yeah.
just about like adding a kid, like having a baby. She's
Right,
like,
right.
this is our empire. And so it's a little dramatic to me. But Kwame, not a fan of. I wanted to like him like early on. And then he just went in the way of so many of these dudes on this show where he's like super interested in another girl, but like
Right.
they have a connection and he can't help their connection. And you're like,
Come on.
you think she's hot. We know you think she's hot. We
Right.
know you're into Chelsea or what, not Chelsea, not his fiance. He's into what's her face, Micah.
Yeah, but like also I feel like you go on the show knowing that like there might be a chance that like you're going to see somebody else on there that you didn't pick that like you might have like given a, second look at if you had a chance to like see
Right.
them in person first. So like you go into it knowing that, but like that's like the whole thing, right? That you pick your person not based on that. So like it's kind of ironic that like that's what all these people like not all of them
Every
obviously,
time.
but you always have one that's always like, "Oh, actually I chose wrong because now I've seen what the other person looks like." It's like, "You idiot. Like why would you go on a show called Love is Blind knowing that this is like a possibility
We're
that you're
four
like,
seasons in. You
right,
should
like
know how this works.
exactly." So
But
that
I
kind of
like when they're
irritates me.
like, no, no, no. I still like with Chelsea. He's like, no, we are solid, girl. We are together. This is so good, blah, blah, blah. But then the way he talks about Micah is like, hang on, you don't sound quite as confident
Right.
in your Chelsea thing. So speaking of Micah, let's go to Micah. Let's
Okay.
go to Micah and Paul. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Chelsea and Kwame, yay, nay.
I'm going to say yes.
You
At
are?
least
Okay.
I think they're going to stay together at least for a little while. I don't know about like a year and two from now, but
We're saying wedding. Are they going to get married?
I think yes, they'll get married.
All right, I'm saying no. Okay, absolutely not. Let's see. All right, so Micah and Paul. Micah is
Awful.
and Paul. And I was gonna say blonde, but yeah, no, awful is fine. Paul is a scientist, and he can't stop
I don't
telling
like
you he's a
either one of them.
scientist.
Can I just say that? Hate is a strong word, but I don't like either one of them. I think Paul does give me he freaks me out. He reminds me of the guy from You.
Oh yeah,
like he really
the
does.
main
Like,
guy.
yeah, but he also
But
has that same dry personality, which is like, I don't know, like some people do dry personality in a way that's funny and humorous. Like I have an
right,
uncle that I love dearly and he is the driest person, but like he's hilarious and not
right.
creepy. You know what I mean? But like this
That is
guy,
an important characteristic.
yeah.
Not creepy.
Not creepy is very important. But like this guy is so like the way his dry personality is and he's so like monotone and boring and I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And I don't feel like they're a good match because of that because I feel like she's way too animated and like not in a good way like necessarily, but she's too like I don't know. I feel like
You're not smart in a good way and you're not animated in a good way. Got
right.
it. Yeah. No, and he just wants to talk about science stuff all the time and like the way he would analyze stuff to me would just absolutely make me also run my head into the wall. Just
Yes.
everything. Like if you're like, oh man, the sky looks great tonight, he would like tell you why the sky looks great and the northern star and what I don't even know what
Right.
that is. But it would be a whole thing where you'd be like, I just thought it was pretty. I don't really want
Yeah.
to talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and he seems like I don't think he's like the most attractive person. He's fine, not like fine, but
I
he's
don't
fine.
think
She's not into him.
she's
But
not into him.
I feel like for scientists, he's good looking, and so he's like, I'm a Mac Daddy. I mean, have you not seen Bill
Sorry
Nye?
to any
He
of
is
you
the
out there that
science
are
guy.
scientists.
then you might be one of the hot ones. I can't help it. I don't make the rules up. So anyway, this one, no. He So anyway, but the whole thing with these two is she like very much is not really into him, but like she's trying because you got to get your 15 minutes of fame, right?
Yeah,
And
but you know who she's into?
she is into Kwame, and
Yes.
Kwame is into her for sure, 100%. So I think she's just still on here to try and see Kwame on these like group outings.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So what do you think about them? Yay, nay?
Nay.
Here's the thing. I'm going to be honest. I think it could go either way. I think it could go either way. You're going to say no? Okay. I'm going to say yes, just to mix things up. Because somebody else has got to get married on here. So you're going to say no, and I'm going to say yes on this one. Last couple.
Oh boy.
Satan herself.
I
This
can't.
is Zach and Irina. Mandy, what you think?
Irina.
Did it freeze?
I don't even know what to say about her and them. Honestly, so at first I really did not like Zach at all. I thought he was going to be really annoying. I thought he was going to be like super arrogant. You know, I thought he just wasn't going to be looking really for anything serious. Well, anyway, I've changed my opinion about that. And I do think that he actually is legitimately looking for someone that he can share his like life with and everything. I think he actually is looking to settle down and get married. I definitely think he messed up his decision big time.
Well, so Zach was originally, he liked a girl named Bliss and he liked Irina. And Irina is a mean girl with Micah.
She's so mean. Just
Such
like
a mean
nasty.
girl.
And like the part that makes me so angry about it, it just makes me so mad.
Really
is that
bothering you.
she talks about how she was bullied because she had acne when she was younger, and she knows what it's like to be judged based on your appearance only, and so that was one of the reasons why she wanted to come on here and all this and that and show that like, you know, she has a wonderful heart and she's a wonderful person and whatever. That's why
I never saw that wonderful heart.
I didn't see it one time. I still haven't. Okay, and like I'm not saying that Zach, I don't know. He had the pixie dust in his eyes, I guess. I don't know what. Something about her hooked him, I guess, and he saw a different side or he had a different take on her than the rest of us did, but she is mean. She's mean to the other girls. She just is mean.
She's very mean. He said she
and
was
insecure. That's the thing. She's insecure, and that's where it all comes from. But that's where it comes from a lot of times with people. But like, this is a PSA. If you want to see like a real bully in action, go check out Irina. She's mean.
She's so mean. Zach did serenade her, I will say. So right off the bat, I was like, Mandy, I literally don't know what he said because I had to fast forward it. I simply cannot watch somebody singing to another person because their reaction is always like trying to enjoy it or like, this is really good. And you're like, no, it's not. It's stupid. And you know it. Yeah. And I hate it. But I did see a TikTok where his sister was like, we lost our mom. Oh, he has like a hard backstory with like his mom. She got hit by a drunk driver and that's how she died. It was just so much. And like, you know, somebody like them where people were like, he's awkward, he's weird. I'm like, well, I think he's just kind of intense and kind of had a little bit of a rough life. But I get that it can come off like a little much, but I feel like he's actually a very nice person.
Me too.
Meanwhile, screwed up. He is still into Bliss, but Bliss told him regarding Irina, if you choose her, I know what kind of character you have or what kind of judge of character you are. 100%.
Right.
He's terrible at judging character. And he's a criminal defense attorney, which made that even more confusing. I was like,
and scary at the same time.
Ruh-roh. Yeah. So anyway, what do you think of them? And she is actually into her friend Micah's science.
Yeah, and her and Micah are supposed to be besties. So it's like these two mean girls are both mean girling each other. Like they're stabbing each other in the back. Like that's why it makes this season so amazing.
So good. It's just so good.
There's backstabbing. There's love triangles.
Chaos and evil. And, nothing good. It makes me forget who I was even cheering for. So
I
if you've
know.
not watched, we are, this is our way of doing a little recap here. But again, patreon.com/moms and mysteries podcast. We are doing live
Live
recaps.
on
It's going to be so
Sundays.
much fun. I'm
We're
so
gonna talk on
excited.
Sundays and let you guys talk with us, right? They can chat to us
Yes,
while
yes,
we
yes, yes,
talk
yes,
about
yes.
it.
We'll have it. Yeah, it'll be chat and all that stuff. And if we can figure
Yes.
out how to do other things, we will.
Awesome.
But we are so excited.
Yeah. Also, I don't think we mentioned it yet, but Melissa set up a Discord server. I have no clue how it works.
You were on there.
I keep getting notifications saying that somebody popped in the server or someone said something, but I can't figure out replying, reacting to things. I can't figure out how to
Aw.
switch what like from general to like the episode topic
Oh,
discussion
okay. So you're not
thing.
selling this very good
I
because
don't know how
you're
to use
literally
it. So anyway,
saying no
I
one come in
want
there.
people. Well, because I keep thinking like, but then also we need more people to come in there and use it and talk, so then I can learn. I've
Yeah.
only seen a couple things, so I haven't had a chance to really play around with it. So get on Discord. I have it set for notifying my phone, so I will be there eventually after I see the notification.
Truly, maybe the worst plug we've ever done for anything.
If you
But it's
want
on
more
Patreon
of
as
this,
well.
but on Discord.
Yeah. So go to Patreon. All that information is there as well. But it's fun. I don't know. Patreon's a little hard to navigate. Here I am doing a great job of talking about Patreon, but sometimes it's great for listening to bonus episodes, which you can do there. But it's a little difficult to write back and forth on there. So that's where Discord, I think, comes in handy. So we have a wonderful person, Abby, is helping us over there. I don't know how much she knows that she's helping us, but she's helped me. So anyway, if make sure you check us out there. Mandy, I think that should be all of our announcements for this week. What do you say?
I think that's it. All right, Melissa, we'll be back next week, same time, same place, new story.
Have a great week.
Bye.